Welcome to another edition of Arizona Wildcats Insiders Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Hutchison. Yesterday, Arizona basketball held a press conference with guards Jaden Bradley and Anthony Del Rosso. Both decided to come back to Arizona. They didn't test out the transfer portal. They didn't test out the NBA draft. They decided they were fully locked in, decided that pretty early, and came back to Tucson. Jaden Bradley did put his name in the pool, but never went to pre-draft workouts and stuff like that. He was locked in here in Tucson. We already told you guys that in our one-on-one interview with Jaden Bradley, if you were able to check that out. And then Anthony Del Rosso, even though his, I don't want to say minutes were limited the first year, they kind of were down the stretch. I know he was in the starting lineup, didn't look around for another opportunity. He was fairly happy here in Tucson. Loved his first year with Tommy Lloyd and the coaching staff. So they're both coming back to finish their final year of college in Tucson. And I think it's a good decision for both of them. You saw Anthony Del Rosso get better offensively down the stretch of the season, be more confident with his shot. Jaden Bradley, I mean, let's face it. He was a guy that was kind of I'm not saying ball hog, but he was a get the ball, take it to the basket type of scoring guard when he first got to Tucson, and you've seen him develop into a true point guard. His assist-to-turnover ratio has increased, looks very good at running the offense, and had a very successful season last year. Even though some offensive numbers were down, I think he was better overall as a point guard. He was better in points per game, increased his minutes played, better assist-to-turnover ratio, and a better defender and a better rebounder. His three-point shooting went down a little bit, but I don't think it was anything to be concerned of. So they both are back in Tucson. They made that decision. They had the press conference, and they talked about their decision as to why they did it. And for those reasons we just talked about, they wanted to see another year underneath this coaching staff, underneath Coach Tommy Lloyd, where they could develop and grow as people and as players. Plus, Arizona welcomed the number one recruiting class in the country, highlighted by Koa Pete and Braden Burries. And these are highly talented freshmen, along with another five-star recruit as well, and 7 total incoming freshmen. You pair that with Toby Awaka. You pair that with Krivas coming back as well. Arizona has one of the better teams in the country. They're going to probably be ranked inside the top 15. If I had to guess right off the bat, I would say it's a top 10 team, top 8 team. And they're going to be right there in the mix of things again. So if you transferred out, where were you going to go? That you could have an opportunity to potentially get past a Sweet 16, get to an Elite 8, Final Four, and maybe even win a national championship. I don't think there's a lot of opportunities out there in that situation. So I think it's perfect for these two. They've been able to work out with some of the freshmen, work out with each other, and they talked about new coaches on the coaching staff. And Brandon Chappell, he came over from Texas after the coaching change there. You saw, Coach Robinson step down and retire after a long, successful 40-plus year career. So Chappelle was kind of running things while Tommy Lloyd and other coaches as well. Well, Tommy Lloyd and other coaches were overseas in the U19 Team USA games in the World Cup. Chappelle and other coaches were able to work out with players. They were able to get a feel for him. And they talked about that relationship and how they like him. They like how he goes about handling practices, how he goes about handling himself as a assistant coach. That relationship seems to be going well for Jaden Bradley and Anthony Rosso and the rest of the roster. But I think everything for Arizona is going to stem off the success of Jaden Bradley. I know you're going to have bigger stars in terms of points per game, rebounds per game, and stuff like that with Cole Pete, Braden Burries, Toby Awaka, maybe even a Krivas. But I think the success of the Wildcats is going to hinge on how well Jaden Bradley develops again. If he could maybe be more that leader out there on the court, I think he did a good job of it last year. Because they're going to need him. They're going to need him in games. He's going to be the true point, the primary ball handler, and I think it's going to be critical for Arizona. Now, let's shift our focus to baseball. I know we've been talking a lot about baseball, but, it is what it is, and the MLB draft just happened, and Mason White was selected by the Boston Red Sox in the 4th round with the 118th overall pick, which is very familiar because the Red Sox did that with Bobby Dahlbeck. Same round, same draft spot, and the Red Sox will be getting a player in white that played short at the college level, but a lot of MLB experts and analysts have projected him as a future second baseman in the Boston Red Sox organization in their minor league system and at the big league level. And so when you look at Mason White, what comes to mind is he's second all-time in home runs in program history, got a big, powerful swing. I don't want to say short and compact body, but it is a frame that isn't too lengthy. It's very compact, very powerful, and he's a solid defender. But that swing, he's really developed because before he was a high strikeout guy. And, Chip Hale and his staff have been working to cut that down, and he did a good job of doing that. He watched the ball more. He was more of a see ball, hit ball type of hitter and just instead of swinging freely. And they developed him into one of the better infielders in college baseball. But he has me remembering of another MLB guy. If you look at Mason White, the type of swing he has, the power in his forearms, very powerful forearms, and just the high leg kick and all the power in the world in a short, compact body, he kind of reminds me of Dan Uggla. Dan Uggla was the second baseman for the Florida Marlins at the time, not the Miami Marlins, but the Florida Marlins, who was a very powerful home run hitter, a 20, 30 home run guy that can drive in runs with the best of them. Today's game probably would have seen time a little bit at the DH position, but just a short, compact body, powerful swing. He struck out a ton. More of a modern day kind of look now compared to the game back then. But he was a 3-time All-Star, and he was one of the better hitting second basemen in the game. And I think that's what you could see out of Mason White. I think their frames very similar. Their power is very similar. I think Mason White has a ton of power in that bat, just like Dan Uggla. I think Mason might be a little bit better of a defensive player if he moves to second instead of short than Dan Uggla at second. I don't think Dan Uggla was very good defensively, but I think Mason White could be pretty solid defensively there. And, they're not super fast. They are what they are. And I'm not saying base-to-base type of player, but they're going to drive the ball in the gap. They're going to hit doubles. They're going to hit homers. They're going to drive in RBI. And they're going to be one of those guys in the lineup that you look at as an RBI producer. And I think that's a great comparison for Mason White. If he turns out to be the player that Dan Uggla was, you're talking about a, 9, 10, 11-year MLB career. And I think any player would sign up for that in a heartbeat. 3-time All-Star. I don't think he was ever, awarded a gold glove, probably a couple of silver sluggers. But that's what type of player I could see Mason White turning into. And if you look at that Boston Red Sox lineup, they have a ton of offense, but they are missing some. They just got rid of their third baseman. They have young and inexperienced players coming up through the minors. They're not spending a lot of money. I think there's a situation where you could see Mason White develop in Boston, and let's say 3, 4, 5 years down the line, because remember, it takes a while to get up from the minors to the majors. You could see him at the major league level being that power hitter, hitting 4th, 5th, 6th in the MLB lineup, maybe even second if they're going a little, putting power hitter up front and giving them more fastballs to hit. But I think of him as a guy that could be that RBI machine for any organization that lets him develop and grow as a player, because it's not for sure that he's going to play in Boston. You see trades in the MLB all the time where prospects never get up to the big league level. They get traded and then they hit the ground running at their new organization, and all of a sudden they become a very good player, star player at their new place. So it's not for sure that Mason White's going to play a single game or a single inning for the Boston Red Sox. But I think it's a type of player that the MLB's got to love. Massive power, good launch angle, good defender, has cut down on his strikeouts, and is fairly patient at the plate. That's something that he's been working on. I think it's something that bodes well to today's style of play. But I could see him having a long career, and to me, he's another Dan Uggla. which is, I think, a great comparison, and I think would be an amazing career for the local Tucsonan, Mason White. So we'll see you here next time. Have a good one.